Hey everyone, I'm Rob Stats Guerrero, one of the hosts of the SB Nation NFL Show. Football season is here, and so is the SB Nation NFL Show. We are keeping you up to date and in the know on everything happening in the league with the twice daily NFL podcast. We've got in-depth analysis, betting and fantasy advice, power rankings, weekly awards, and much more. Plus, you can start your weekdays off every morning with our daily kickoff show, where we'll tell you everything you need to know about the NFL in less than 10 minutes. So subscribe to the SB Nation NFL Show today and get the football coverage you deserve.
Hey, what is up? Hello, and welcome in to another edition of Downey and Martez, a Bucks Nation podcast right here on SB Nation. Once again, I am one half of the dynamic duo that is Downey and Martez. I am Trey Downey, and with me every single week, you hear him multiple times on the Bucks Nation feed every week. It is the host of the Monday Morning Extra Point and the co-host of Downey and Martez, Lynn Martez.
Ooh, I like that intro. I don't know how effective it is when it comes to describing the multi-talented Len Martez, but as I speak in the third person. Let's get started, man. Let's talk about Sunday night football. A little something going on Sunday night. And also, this five-time Pro Bowl quarterback joining the Buccaneers.
We will get into all of that in just moments. Your social reminder to start the show. Follow Lynn on Twitter at Elmar810. Follow myself at TD Experience, and follow Bucks Nation at Bucks_Nation. Check out BucksNation.com on a daily basis for the latest and greatest on your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, wherever you're listening to this podcast, click that plus button on Apple, subscribe on Spotify. You'll get the podcast downloaded to your preferred listening device before you even have to do anything. And you'll get a notification. Wake up in the morning, nice drive to work with Downey and Martez, or the Monday Morning Extra Point, because when you subscribe to this feed, you will get both of those podcasts on your phone. Lynn, let's rewind a little bit before we get into the signing in this week and into a little bit of what I'm sure you talked about on Monday Morning Extra Point this week with Brandon Doughty, former NFL quarterback. And that was the Bucs' first loss of the season. They lose to the LA Rams. Both of us picked the Rams to win that game. Were you surprised, though, at how dominant the win was for Los Angeles?
I was surprised they were able to get as much pressure on Tom as they did. Tom being Tom Brady, and the Rams defense, they hit him a few more times that you wanted to see. And obviously, when you start talking about Aaron Donald and
he's ridiculous, man,
and the ability to what's so good for him and for their defense and so bad for teams that play them now is that you got to find him. There was a time where he was a DT and that was it. He played where he played and that was it. He lined up outside a whole lot of times on Sunday. And it was one particular time where Gronk had the responsibility of trying to get in front of him. Whiff. And by the time Donovan Smith got over, it was too late.
Went through both of them, man.
Yeah, it was too late. And I don't know. I actually shot that video and posted it on Twitter, Elmar810. And
we got some
most folks, we're thinking in terms of, hey, man, as much as we give Donovan a hard time, Donovan did not have a shot when it came to trying to stop this guy who, basically is a locomotive train, nearly 300 pounds. And once he gets rolling to the quarterback, yeah, you got no shot.
If you want to take some positives from the game, I think it's the continued, I don't even want to call it a resurgence, but after week 1, when there were questions about Mike Evans has really turned things on in the past couple of weeks. The Bucs answered some successful Rams drives very well. So those will be the positives that I take out of the game. Yes, the Rams were pretty dominant, but I don't look at that game and think, wow, if these two teams meet in the playoffs, that the Bucs won't have a chance. I think especially if they get healthy on the defensive side of the ball and in the secondary, that will help quite a bit. And having Sean Murphy-Bunting to match up against a guy like Cooper Kupp will definitely help. And having Richard Sherman, I think, will help. I'm going to be interested to see how this – we'll pivot now. Let's pivot now to Sherman and how this –
Well, slow down because, you want to talk about Sherman, but yeah, we haven't really got into the game yet. We haven't really – I when you talk about the Rams win, and if you were to ask me, like you did, in regards to, the unexpected, I told you one of the things. But for the most part, as you stated already, we both picked the Rams to win this football game based off of the inability for the Bucs to stop the pass and the multifaceted weapons that the Rams have on the outside. We certainly didn't expect to see a Deshaun Jackson sighting getting behind the defense the way he did. By the way, all the taunting calls you had the last
and he didn't get one on that touchdown.
How do you not get one there? Mike Edwards backs in the way he did, and that dude runs the whole goal line, a la Dallas Cowboys and Giants days, and when he was on the Eagles. I understand.
I think it's a stupid rule, period.
Oh, yeah. No. You want to curb
but
calling.
You want to be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to curb calling that penalty. Curb it. But you can't curb it in the middle of the year and not tell everybody, hey, we're going to chill out. We're not going to be calling those penalties anymore. Because you know what we remember? The ones you called already and then watching the guy do what he did on Sunday. But beyond that, again, you lose Jamel Dean, so that's bad right off the bat. And as much as we predicted the Rams to win that football game, once that happened, I was like, they're done. Because you can't keep diving into your depth chart and start playing a third corner, a fourth corner, like they're at 1 or 2. It's not going to work, especially with the offense that you were playing. It's one thing to play a team that's maybe not as capable as the Rams are, but Cooper Kupp's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. I don't care what anybody says.
He's very close if he's not number one.
He's leading the league in yards, and he's tied for number 1 in receptions. I'm not talking talent-wise. I'm talking about production right now. He's the best. We can sit there. We can talk about all the one-hand grabs and double teams that DeAndre Hopkins beats and all that kind of stuff, and Stephon Diggs. I get it. And Tyreek Hill running past people. I get it. But production right now, the number 1 guy is Cooper Kupp. And when you start losing DBs in the middle of the game, when you've already lost one, you're shot, dude.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that was really the bad. The ugly was watching frickin' Deshaun walk the frickin' goal line the way he did.
So did it worry you, before we get into the Sherman thing and how it all fits in? My other worry, I said last week on the podcast, and then I also said on our pregame show on Twitter Spaces this past weekend, that I thought that the best game plan for the Bucs to be able to stop the Rams was getting a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford. They didn't do that very well on Sunday. Does the lack of pressure from the Bucs pass rush worry you at all, or did they have to be more vanilla because of the injuries in the secondary? That's a
really good question. That's a really good point too. Obviously, you were missing Jason Pierre-Paul and Joe Tryon. Soyanka did an admirable job, but it's his first NFL start. And when you lose, again, as much depth as you may have at a position, when you start diving into that depth, roles change. And not having Jason Pierre-Paul there to either line up in the middle of your defensive line or stand up on the outside or whatever it is, and the way he's adapted to playing in Todd Bowles' his defense, beyond me, because I didn't think he'd be able to do it when Todd Bowles was hired, thinking, how's JPP going to play in this defense? And he's been awesome the last couple of years in this defense. But as far as not getting pressure on the quarterback, we can talk about in regards to, as you mentioned, maybe going a little bit vanilla when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. But dude, week 1, Dak blew him up. And I know Sean Murphy-Bunting got hurt in that game, but still, this team is the worst team in the league against the pass. They've given up the most yards.
This is starting to look like the Bucs defense of a few years ago, where they were still solid against the run, but there were so many questions in the back end. And it's kind of funny because we kind of talked last week how during those years everybody was like, "Oh, the Bucs secondary so young, they need to bring in a veteran corner. They need to bring in a veteran corner." And here we are.
Yeah. No, but when it comes to, that lack of pressure, am I worried? Yeah, a little bit. Because like anything else, I mean, you talk about a couple of years ago, what was the concern? And I know it's a totally different team. Certainly there's a few players that were on that football team, but a couple of years ago, we were like, where are the turnovers? Teams fall into turnovers in the NFL, right? Decent teams, good teams, by mistake, get turnovers. And I'm not saying that this team can't get turnovers. That's not my point. My point is getting sacks, getting pressures. You've got a lot of money on that defensive line. And I know there's times where you game plan for Shaq Barrett now, right? He's out there the whole time.
And you can do it even more when Jason Pierre-Paul's out.
Exactly. That's my point when I say when you start diving into your depth chart, roles change and teams that play you are going to attack you differently. And that's exactly it.
So now we can talk about Richard Sherman. Is there anything else you want to get into from this past Sunday? Okay. So Richard Sherman signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, announces on his new podcast after flying to Tampa Bay. And an interesting story came out that once he was on the flight to Tampa Bay, he got a call from his former team, the Seattle Seahawks, to try to convince him to go to Seattle instead. But Tom Brady,
hey man, you slow, you done, man. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
snooze, you lose.
Exactly.
So especially when Tom Brady is the one that personally reaches out.
If you wanted him, you could have signed him before he was doing other things. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I do believe there were some reports that the Seahawks did kick the tires, but then when he had the offseason issues, that kind of changed things a little bit.
Well, here's the problem, Trey, is just like you said, the report came out that, allegedly Seattle, contacted him while he's on his way here. Well, excuse me, but you had all this time to do it. And the same way, allegedly, Seattle contacted him. I'm willing to tell you that, and it's just a guess, but I'm willing to tell you that they did it with the idea of knowing, getting a whiff that he's getting ready to go somewhere else.
Oh, for sure.
And at that standpoint, I mean, it's like, well, hold on. I already asked her to go to the prom, and now you want to step up to me? And I asked her? Oh, hell no. No. I already asked her. No. Bye. Why? Because someone else wants me now? No. And that's what Seattle's deal. Now, because someone else wanted him, now you want him. No.
And I mean, you had these reports went on for weeks that the Bucs were interested. Then it came out that Carolina was interested as well. So if you're Seattle, you had time to reach out to
absolutely.
To
and like I said, they got wind of him coming here, literally on his way here. So they try to, 24th hour, 23rd hour, last ditch effort to change his mind. And at that standpoint, you brought up the point of Sherman signing here, and not the number one reason why, but Sherman signing here to keep him away from the Carolina Panthers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seattle had the opportunity to sign him before he got here. They could have rolled out the roses anytime they wanted to. But when did they decide to roll out the roses? when he's already on a plane. And that tells you they weren't serious. They just wanted to keep him away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who they may run into in the playoffs.
If they're in the playoffs, with Seattle sitting at 1-2 right now, and the rest of that division is playing pretty dang well.
There you go, Mr. Arizona Cardinal. Go ahead.
I mean, they look dang good. We'll talk about that when we talk about the games that we're going to
after this week.
We'll talk about that when we get to the games to watch this weekend. So now let's talk about the Sherman signing and how it kind of plays out. You've mentioned when we talked about this in past weeks that you think that he's probably going to come in here and play a little bit more zone because of his age and, you know, where he's at physically and things like that. I don't mind that. Todd Bowles does use a lot of zone schemes, especially he likes to run those zone blitzes. So it is going to be an interesting thing as far as where he lines up and things like that, and then how long Jamel Dean is going to be out, how much he's banged up, and then Sean Murphy-Bunting when he returns. That's the most interesting thing to me, is when this Bucs secondary gets fully healthy, where Sherman kind of fits in. Does he take that other outside spot from Jamel Dean, and Jamel Dean is just put in spots, and Murphy-Bunting just slides back into his role in the slot? I don't think you're playing Richard Sherman in the slot at this stage in his career. So I think that's probably how it plays out, but I also think it's dependent on how Sherman looks while Jamel Dean is still a little bit banged up. And I'm sure they'll split time on the outside, and then the Bucs will make the decision based on their play as far as who is going to get the majority of that playing time, talking on the other side opposite of Carlton Davis on the outside. Because as I've said multiple times, Sean Murphy-Bunting is going to slide right back into the slot once he gets back. I don't think Richard Sherman is coming in here and taking time away from Cockrell, who I've given a lot of crap to, but he made a couple of plays this past weekend where, I mean, the talent level is not 100% there, but that man's effort is one of the highest on the Buccaneers. But yeah, back to Sherman. I think that's kind of how it plays out. Agree, disagree?
My thing is, and I will tell you that he's going to be on the outside. I agree he's not going to be in the slot, because the other two guys are more adaptable to playing the slot as it is when it comes to Sean Murphy-Bunting when he does return, and Jamel Dean. As far as what type of defense this team's going to play, look, God bless Richard Sherman, summa cum laude from Stanford, 5th round pick, 5-time All-Pro cornerback, and also a member of the last decade's Pro Football Hall of Fame team. I mean, the guy is going to be a Hall of Famer at one
probably
point.
in my lifetime, probably the member of the best secondary group that I've seen in my past 31 years of my life with the Legion of Boom in Seattle.
No doubt. No doubt. By the way, who was one of those safeties on that team? Cam Chancellor. Yeah. Go Hokies, baby. Tech. Go Hokies.
Yeah.
I actually covered Cam when he was in college, and I was out there in Blacksburg with him. Good dude. But back to Sherman. Here's the thing that I like more than anything else. And yes, you get a guy with that still has talent and is able to play. And just like anything else.
Played well last year.
Just like anything else. You know, but he hasn't played in almost probably, I want to say, like 9 or 10 months, because he got hurt last year too.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got to get into shape, and he's obviously slowly doing that. We don't know if he's going to play on Sunday. You mentioned Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean, we'll find out today whether or not he practiced on Thursday and Friday.
I believe Bruce Arians said it's highly unlikely that Sherman suits up on Sunday.
Yeah, he did say that, but it's also a matter of need now, because as Jamel Dean can't go, all of a sudden you have a healthy but slightly out of shape corner, Richard Sherman, who might be able to give you something. And it might just be 15 snaps, 20 snaps, whatever it is, but he can give you something. But my point in all this is that Sherman's never been, like I said, going back to even a 5th round pick, and when he was part of that secondary that you mentioned, he's never been a real man-to-man guy.
They played a decent amount of man-to-man in Seattle.
They played a lot of zone, dude, and they played a lot of zone. But what he is one of the smartest players that, I mean, in my lifetime, to play on defense and play.
I'm not worried about him picking up the playbook at all.
No, here's the thing, though, too. And again, he looks across the other field, I mean, on the other side of the ball, and he can tell you what they're going to do. And as a corner, that's half the battle. You know, you can talk about running step to step with a guy, and you could run a 4-3, but if you don't know where that dude's going or where he's going to lose you. And if you don't know what that quarterback is thinking about doing, he's going to lose you. So when it comes to, and we've talked about football IQ before, when it comes to Gronk and Brady, and even on the low end, we talked about Ronald Jones. Yep. One thing that Richard Sherman's going to bring this secondary, whether it be on the field or in that classroom, he's going to bring you huge IQ to this team. And when it comes to a team that's struggling with worst in the NFL in pass defense, you daggone right, you're going to kick the tires with this dude and find out how much he can bring to your football team. The thing about it more than anything else, though, too, is for me, when it comes to Sherman and Arians and Todd Bowles, is these guys have Todd Bowles and Bruce Arians have watched Sherman in the last probably 10 years when he was in the NFC West, when he was at Seattle, and he was at Arizona, and the coaches were when he was at San Francisco and Seattle, and the coaches were at Arizona, going up against him twice a year. You know what you were doing back then if you were an offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals? And obviously
to the other side.
Yep, looking to see what 25 is. And that's what Bruce has been doing when he was playing against Richard Sherman. And he knows how smart he is. And for me, Bruce is, to me, he's probably one of the biggest player coaches there are in the NFL. He's going to shoot it straight to you. Guys tell you flat out, Bruce, BA is going to give it to you straight. And you know what? If BA is going to give it to you straight, you know what he's not going to do? He's not going to bring this guy out and have Richard Sherman tarnish what he's done in this league. If he can't play, he wouldn't be here.
I agree with you as far as they worked him out. They knew you know that he's ready to play, or you don't bring Richard Sherman in here to this locker room, especially in a situation where your division looks like it might be more competitive than what you thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season. You mentioned when you were talking about football IQ there, one more quick thing I want to get into as far as possible moves before we start previewing Sunday Night Football against the New England Patriots is you mentioned Ronald Jones. And this Sunday was a little bit different because the Bucs were behind, so you weren't going to see a ton of them running the ball. But I think throughout the stretch of the first few weeks of the season, the first 3 weeks of the season in the NFL, for the Bucs, other than the issues in the secondary, probably their biggest issues are the fact that they're not getting much out of their running backs. Both Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones have not played stellar.
Tom was the leading rusher last Sunday.
It came out this week that the Indianapolis Colts and Marlon Mack, former USF running back, have mutually agreed to seek a trade partner. I know the Bucs are stacked when it comes to running back, and it's not like if they were to make that trade that they would trade Ronald Jones for Marlon Mack straight up or anything like that. It would likely have to be a draft pick, and then the Bucs would have to figure out what they do on the back end there. But do you think, with the issues that the Bucs have had in the backfield so far, that it is worth a call to Indianapolis to explore this Marlon Mack thing? I know there are a lot of teams, San Francisco, Baltimore come to mind, that make a lot more sense. But is it worth a call for the Bucs to possibly bring Marlon Mack back to the stadium where he had fantastic success with USF? It's
worth a call because it would be an area that you would need to improve. But if the market includes multiple teams, guess what that gives the Colts?
Leverage.
Exactly. And because of that, like I'm not giving up a whole lot for him because honestly, they won a Super Bowl with this backfield, and they added a true third down back who's
probably playing the best out of the running backs on this team.
He was a positive on Sunday too.
Yeah.
He's still learning the playbook. I mean, when Brandon Doughty, former NFL quarterback, and I were talking on the Monday Morning Extra Point, we were talking about how Brandon brought up the fact that he's still learning the playbook because Tom, when they break the huddle, is moving Gio around to the right spots. But as a pro, I mean, professionally, Gio's done great. He's going to pick up the blitzes. He's going to allow you to spread them out wide and find out what the defense is doing. So, I mean, you got two starting running backs, dude. And again, you won a Super Bowl with those two starting running backs. So is it a dire need? So you got to get into a bidding war? Heck no, not worth it for me.
I agree with you. I do think that beyond trading for another back, I think we could if Ronald Jones doesn't have a breakout game over the next few weeks and we get closer to the trading deadline and you still have teams like the Ravens, like the Dolphins, like the 49ers who have issues at running back, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs get a couple of calls on Ronald Jones for teams that saw his talent last year and think that a change of scenery might benefit Ronald Jones. But I do think that we're a couple of weeks away from that. And now we'll pivot into this weekend. And I think that this is a weekend where I said it against Atlanta and it didn't fully happen. But I think that this is a weekend where the Bucs can afford to put more focus on the running game and try and get it going, because especially with a rookie quarterback and Todd Bowles feasts on rookie quarterbacks, the Bucs have their issues, but I'm not 100% sure that Matt Jones as a rookie and the lack of established weapons that they have are going to be able to take advantage of some of the Bucs' weaknesses right now. I think if the Bucs want to make this kind of a dog fight, they can. And I think that they'll have the opportunity to get the running game going, because I don't see New England jumping out on the Bucs early. I don't think that their offense is going to be able to attack the Bucs' defense, even with the injuries that they have in the same way that the first three teams did. You can say what you will about Atlanta's lack of weapons, but they still have a former MVP quarterback in Matt Ryan.
Oh, no. Yeah,
and Mac Jones is certainly not that yet at all, or will ever be, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. What do you think as far as does New England do anything offensively that scares you coming into this weekend?
No. I giggle though that you think that the Bucs are going to all of a sudden decide, well, let's run the ball. So just so we're clear,
maybe it's a week where you can try and get it going. You need to get the running game going at some point.
Okay. Of all the weeks,
I'm sure Tom wants to throw 7 touchdowns, whatever.
Of all the weeks to reestablish the run game, you want it to be in the most anticipated football game of the century, where the greatest quarterback in the NFL is going up against a team that he played for 20 years and brought 6 Super Bowls to, and play against the greatest coach, arguably, of all time, who they have an animosity to each other that is clear. Like, divorce wasn't a good divorce, dude. So
did you hear the comments Belichick made this week about the Bucs are running the Patriots offense?
Yeah.
And then Bruce firing back was fantastic.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Maybe they were running my offense.
No, here's the thing. What you need to realize is that dissect what they said, okay? He's talking about the Bucs copying the Patriots offense. You know what Belichick's been doing for the last 20 to 22 years in the NFL, even when he was coaching Cleveland? He's watching game film. And you know who he's watching? He's watching the Colts, who he played every year in the playoffs. He's watching the Steelers, who he played every year in the playoffs. He's watching the Ravens, who he played every year in the playoffs. Guess who coached for two of those teams? Bruce Arians.
Yep.
So he's watching film, and they all do this. There's no denying it. Everybody picks and chooses stuff that they see on film. That's what they do.
In every single field in the world, all the best ideas are stolen.
Of course. I mean, you're not sitting here copying the bad stuff. You watch Peyton Manning do what he did, like I said, Indianapolis with Bruce Arians as his offensive coordinator. You watch Ben Roethlisberger do it in Pittsburgh with Bruce Arians as an offensive coordinator. So you've got to prepare against those teams. You play them, whether you play them in the playoffs or the regular season. That's what Bill's watching. Bill's watching that. And again, they all do it. They pick and choose what they want. You and I are both wrestling fans, right?
Yep.
We can't watch a match without watching someone else doing someone else's move that somebody did 15, 20 years ago.
Shout out to Roman Reigns doing the rock bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Your boy. Stealing Dwayne's move. How dare you? But here's the thing. They're not copying the bad wrestlers. You see anybody running around?
Nobody's doing the Repo Man's finisher in 2021.
Running around doing the Barry Howard's move.
Hey, don't talk bad about the pat on the back. No, that's my favorite.
Nobody's running around doing the Brooklyn Brawlers move. They all do the stuff that's good and that works. So again, Bruce can, whether it be Bruce or Bill, they can talk about copying each other. They all copy each other. That's how it is. But you think, again, back to my point as I got ADD, you think that Tom's going to go up there and be like, yeah, let's give it to Ronald 15 times. And let's give it to Lenny 15 times. Hell no. That dude wants to put up 40 in his first game, not in a Patriots uniform, in Gillette Stadium, to let everybody know I am still the man.
How do you think he's received?
Oh, they're cheering for him.
You think so?
Of course, you have to. You have to.
It's Boston. I wonder how mixed it.
No.
I think it'll be mostly. I think it'll be mostly cheers. But I'm interested to see if there's some smattering of boos here.
Here's the thing: if you boo him, I just mentioned the divorce, all right? And allegedly, based off of books that are coming out and excerpts and all that kind of stuff, Tom reached out to Bill. Bill's the one that didn't have the time to discuss the future and playing with the Patriots past his last year. When he was a free agent, he reached out. Whether Bill was on a safari trip, hanging out with Saban on their boats in West Virginia, whatever it was, he didn't take the time to talk to his quarterback. And so what is Tom supposed to do? Wait on you? I'm the greatest of all time, dude. Okay, you don't want me? I'm out. I'm gone. And because of that, that's why you can't boo him if you're a Patriots fan, because you know who got rid of him? The dude who's running your team now with a 1 and 2 start. As much as I like Belichick, as far as a coach is concerned.
Do you expect any kind of interaction between the two?
Yeah,
pre or post game?
There has to be. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Parcells went back to New England to coach against Belichick after Belichick was supposed to be the heir apparent for the Jets job and decided, you know what? Robert Kraft just gave me a call 24 hours ago and offered me more money. I think I'm going to go up to New England, not to the Jets job. Wait a minute, you are head coach. We already announced it. Nah, it's okay. But we can, don't worry about the contract. I got another job. I'm going up to New England. So again, there was sour grapes between Parcells and Belichick. These are guys that won championships together in New York and were with New England together. Belichick was his defensive coordinator in New England. And he was also his defensive coordinator with the Jets too. So, but that was frosty. And they interacted. It wasn't much, but they interacted. They also did, I guess they did like a 30 for 30 after it was all done too with Belichick.
Oh, the two Bills, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it may take some time. We may get that with Tom and Bill, but the frostiness is gonna it's gonna go away, but I don't think it'll be. There won't be no bro hugs. I think it'll be a quick handshake and maybe a lean in with one elbow, maybe.
Because Gronk might go for a bro hug with Bill. Gronk might.
I don't doubt. But Bill's not a bro hug guy, dude.
Yeah.
I don't. He's really uncomfortable with that public setting as it is. No days off. No days off. He's not good in that settings, dude.
If there is an upset on Sunday night, is it because Belichick surprises us and puts together such a great defensive game plan that gives the Bucs fits, or is it Mac Jones having a breakout game? I tend to think it's more likely that somehow maybe the Patriots pass rush gets to Brady, and it's more of a low scoring kind of game, and the Patriots squeak one out, as opposed to the Patriots beating the Bucs in a shootout or even, getting up early.
Totally agree. You're not going to have Mac Jones outplay Tom Brady. As I just mentioned, that dude's going up there for his first game in the enemy uniform, so to speak, to play in New England. And I can't see anyone out dueling him in that game. I mean, unfortunately, it's Mac Jones, a rookie quarterback, but I don't care who they had up. I don't care if Cam was still there. That's not the way that's not the way that I think the Pats will game plan. And if they are successful in beating the Bucs, it's about keeping Tom off the football field and a few wrinkles and surprises. Because, nobody knows Tom better than Bill. And as much as Tom knows Bill too, Tom has weaknesses, and they aren't a lot. But when you start getting that pass rush in the middle of the field, that's guys don't like to get hit. We watched it in Super Bowls. We watched it in 2007 and 2012. Tom's not trying to get off the grass and get off the turf, man. He's 44 years old, and the ball's going to come out quickly too, which in turn kind of makes you think how the Pats will play on the line of scrimmage when it comes to the outside weapons, because ball's going to come out. You pressure Tom in the middle of the field, ball's going to come out. Now it's whether or not you're able to stop the weapons that the balls are going to.
Yeah, I think you'll see it in the predictions article coming up this week on BucsNation.com. Both Lynn and I have the Bucs winning this game, and we don't think it's going to be uber competitive. That is the game that the national eyes are going to be on this weekend, even if it isn't the most competitive game just because of the storylines. But I want to talk about the rest of the NFL schedule a little bit before we get out of here. And as far as the games that I'm looking forward to this weekend, and I want to focus on the undefeated teams that are left in the NFL, because I think all of them are in interesting matchups this weekend. The game that I'm looking forward to most is the one between undefeated teams. And we talked about it earlier. The Rams hosting the Arizona Cardinals. And I think that could be an early statement game for Arizona if they're able to upset LA. Another interesting one is Carolina, even with the injuries that they have right now, going to Dallas to play a Dallas team that has won 2 straight and were a Ryan Suckup field goal away from being undefeated as well. You've got Denver, who might be the most surprising undefeated team in the NFL. They are hosting the Baltimore Ravens, who have also won 2 straight. Justin Tucker's longest field goal in NFL history. And then you've got the Raiders and the Chargers, the Raiders, another surprising team, playing a Chargers team whose only loss was a close one in Dallas. I think all 4 of those games are super intriguing and have the makings of being very competitive. Denver's the most surprising to me. I think them and Carolina both could lose this weekend, and obviously we're going to have one lose in the battle of unbeatens. But that one's the game of the week to me. Arizona and Los Angeles, I think, could have lasting implications in that division. I think both are playoff teams, but I think a win in that one goes further for Arizona if they get the win and they get that confidence early in the season.
All right, here's the bottom line, Stone Cold.
Okay.
For one, at the end of this weekend, I'm telling you right now, at the end of this weekend, and you'll bring it up if I'm wrong, if you remember.
I think I know where you're going with this.
There's only going to be one undefeated team left.
Okay.
And that's going to be the Los Angeles Rams. One thing we didn't talk about when it came to the Bucs traveling to La La Land in LA was that SoFi Stadium is loud. It was loud. And I don't know what the capacity was, but if you got to go there in January, I mean, let's say the Rams end up being the number one ranked team come playoff time. The Super Bowl and playoffs would end up going through LA. And
man, that's going to be a weird. Imagine a situation where the Rams and Chargers both end up with home field advantage, and they're host.
It's not a stretch. It's not a stretch. But when it comes to that game, there's only going to be one undefeated team left after the weekend because the Rams are going to win that game. Dallas is, as you mentioned, one kick away, one not called offensive pass interference call from winning here in Tampa Bay on that opening night where Chris Godwin got away with a push, no push, whatever. But look, Cowboys somehow have found a way to get back to doing what they should have been doing for the last couple of years. Stop having Dak throw 55 times. They're running the football. They got a two-headed monster, and they're playing at home on Sunday. And I see them beat the Panthers, who don't have their dual threat running back in McCaffrey. Hubbard's good, but he's not McCaffrey. When it comes to the Broncos, and they're playing the Ravens, and granted, the Broncos are at home, but I'm not buying them. And
I'll ask you this: out of the undefeated teams, I picked 3 of them to be kind of my surprise teams of the season. So I'm not completely shocked by them. Denver has played a very weak schedule, so I think that's why they're undefeated. You weren't as high on those other teams as Arizona, Carolina, and the Raiders as I was. But out of the 4 that are surprising, is Denver still the most surprising to you? And which you're not buying Denver. Are you buying into any of the other 4 at all?
When you start diving into who, and not the result now that the teams are 0-9, but when you really look at the schedule and see who the Broncos had the first 3 weeks, you could have kind of predicted that they were going to end up being 3-0. It's kind of what I told you about the Carolina Panthers. You got them winning 9 and 10 games. I said, well, guess what? On the front end of their schedule, they better feast because they're going to have 3 games where they could potentially win, and they've done that. So, I mean, they've done what they're supposed to do. The one thing I will say about the Broncos is that, man, I was looking at some numbers, and they play teams that, are combined 0-9, but they are really dominating teams when it comes to like total yards. I mean, they got like 600 more total yards than they've given up. And, that last undefeated team, the Raiders, you're talking about 2 overtime wins, right? 2 overtime wins. And granted, they were real impressive on the road at Heinz Field and beating the Steelers. But I am high on the LA Chargers, really high on their offense. I wish they ran Eckler more than they do, but they have 2 of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Nobody talks about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I know those guys do, man, are mismatches.
Williams is really breaking out this year and stepping up in
red zone, dude.
Echelon. Yeah.
Big boy.
Reminds me so much of Mike Evans. And he was here when he played in that national championship against Alabama at Raymond James Stadium. And I remember on media day in college, I thought he reminded me of Mike Evans. And I asked him about the comparisons to Mike Evans, and he said that's one of the guys that he models his game after. Took him a little bit to get going, but now that he has that quarterback in Justin Herbert, I'm very high on Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen, criminally underrated.
Not to mention the fact that on the other side of the ball, they've got a Asante Samuel Jr. playing great cornerback as a rookie for them, and they got an all-world safety in Derwin James. So, when you could put two guys in the secondary like that, and you can start cutting field in half in a league that, for the most part, is going to throw the ball, and the teams that you have to beat in your own division are focused on throwing the football, because the Raiders don't have Josh Jacobs. He's banged up. KC can't run it. Those two teams throw the football. And all of a sudden, the Chargers show up, and they're cutting the field off because they got James and Samuel on that side of the field. I mean, that's why I'm big on the Chargers, man. Big.
Yeah, no, I like the Chargers a lot, and I think both them and the Raiders can be playoff teams along with Kansas City, who Kansas City's in a weird spot, man. Falling to 1-2 early in the season. They can't afford to drop any more of these early season games when you've got the other teams in that division. Especially, a lot of people were high on the Chargers going into the season, but you've got the two that people probably predicted finish third and fourth in the division, getting off to a hot start and getting momentum. And no matter what you say, man, momentum is a real thing. And yes, Denver beat up on bad teams, but if Denver can beat the Ravens, who already beat the Chiefs and are, Baltimore hasn't looked stellar so far. They barely beat a Lions team that neither of us think are very good. I don't completely count out Denver winning that game, but Denver wins that game, gets a little bit more confidence, especially Teddy Bridgewater getting more confidence, especially the way that his NFL career has played out. That division, man, it's hard to say Kansas City's in trouble, but the way the rest of that division is
could say
you never know.
You could say it because they're doing things that lose football games, turning the ball over, and can't stop running water on defense.
And Josh Gordon's going to fix it all.
Yeah. Can he play corner? Because that's what they need. They need secondary help. They don't need more weapons.
They should have been kicking the tires on Richard Sherman or making the call to Jacksonville like Carolina did to bring in another corner.
I know Andy Reid is like, the Pope of resurrections, wants to resurrect a career and this, that, and that kind of stuff. And, hopefully Josh Gordon can get his 8th chance and this time make it work. But Dad, dude, you got other needs. You got bigger needs than another. I mean, you can't even get Hardman the ball enough times, and now you're bringing Josh Gordon. Come on.
And this is after you lost Sammy Watkins this offseason. So it's that division is that both of the Wests in the NFC and the AFC are shaping up to be very, very fascinating. You've got teams that people were very high on in Kansas City and Seattle, both sitting at 1-2. With two other 3-0 teams and a 2-1 team in their same division. It's going to be fascinating to watch play out. Huge NFL slate this weekend. We mentioned all of the undefeated teams in intriguing games. Plus, you've got Bucs and Patriots, Tom Brady's return to Foxborough. So going into the weekend, remember, check out BucsNation.com for all of the latest previews, news. They'll have their eye on the injury report, all that leading up into the weekend. And then during the game and leading up to the game, you can follow both of us on social media for our takes on the football game. Follow Lynn at Elmar810. Follow myself on Twitter at TD Experience. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, click that subscribe button, please. It helps us a ton. Until next week, when we will be talking the results from Bucs and Patriots, this has been Downey and Martez, a Bucs Nation podcast.